In this quick video, I'm going to show you how to deal with Trace Debt Recovery. You probably received a letter from Trace Debt Recovery or even had them knocking at your door. When I had debt collectors chasing me back in 2010, it caused me a lot of stress and anxiety. But since then, I've worked in the credit card industry for over 10 years, and I'm happy to say I've been able to use my insider knowledge to help thousands of people out of debt. So today, I'd like to share my knowledge by answering 5 frequently asked questions, such as how do you reduce your repayment amounts? How to stop Trace Debt Recovery from contacting you? What happens if you ignore them? And what they're not allowed to do when collecting your debt. At the end of this video, I have a bonus tip on how to write off some of your debt, so stick around to the end. Okay, so question number 1, are Trace Debt Recovery legitimate? Well, if you've received a letter in the post, this is probably your first question. If you don't recognize the company name, it might be that they have purchased your debt or are a debt collector collecting on behalf of another company. I can confirm that Trace Debt Recovery is a UK registered company, and whilst there are a bunch of scams out there when it comes to debt collectors, I'm afraid this is unlikely to be a scam. However, you should never pay unless you're certain that the debt is yours. You're well within your rights to ask Trace Debt Recovery to provide proof that the debt is yours, and I have a letter template on my website, which I'll link to in the description below. Okay, question number 2. What happens if you ignore Trace Debt Recovery? Well, if you ignore debt collectors, your problem could escalate and become very serious. Trace Debt Recovery does have the right to take court action against you. If you were to ignore court letters, then you could end up with a county court judgment or CCJ, which could have a major impact on your credit score and your chances of borrowing money in the future. If you do get a CCJ and you still don't pay, this could ultimately result in bailiffs coming to your home to take your valuable items or even your car. So please don't ignore them, and we'll get to what you should do later in this video. Question number 3. What Trace Recovery are not allowed to do? Well, despite being legally appointed to collect your debt or outright owning your debt, there's several things that Trace Recovery cannot do when it comes to collecting your debts. Knowing that Trace Recovery must uphold a set of standards set out by the regulatory guidelines will make you feel a lot more comfortable and confident when dealing with them. So here's the things they're legally not allowed to do. They're not allowed to visit your place of work without you giving them specific permission to do so. Before this rule was in place, some debt collectors would show up while you're working and try and make things awkward for you as a way of pressuring you into paying. And on a similar note, they're not allowed to speak to neighbours, friends, or family about your debt. Again, this is to stop them from trying to embarrass you or shame you into paying your debt. Trace Debt Recovery can't contact you or visit your home during unreasonable times of the day. For phone calls, most people would agree that this is before 8 a.m. or after 9 p.m. That would be too early or too late to call you. But your circumstances might be different. For example, if you work a night shift, if you can't take calls during certain times of the day, then tell them. They should keep a record of this and avoid calling you at those times. If they do call you during those times, you're well within your rights to make a complaint. They're not allowed to act in a threatening or intimidating way, and they should never pressurize you into paying larger installments than you can afford or hitting payment deadlines that are impossible. The regulations also say they're not allowed to pressure you into selling your home or to take out credit to pay your existing debts. If they do any of this, then absolutely put in a complaint. Debt collectors cannot pretend to be bailiffs or enforcement agents. Unlike bailiffs, debt collectors can't force their way into your house, and they can't refuse to leave when you ask them to. And they're certainly not allowed to take any of your belongings or clamp your car. Question number 4 is, how long can you be chased for debt? Well, under the Limitation Act of 1980, a creditor has 6 years to chase most unsecured unpaid debts, or 12 years for some mortgage debts. This limitation period starts from the time of your last payment or when you last acknowledged the debt. If a CCJ has been registered against you before the limitation period has passed, then it can be enforced at any point because there's no limitation period for a CCJ. Similarly, the Limitation Act does not apply to debts owed to the government, such as income tax, benefit overpayments, and council tax. This means that these types of debts can be collected even after 6 years have passed. Okay, last question, then I have that bonus tip on how you can potentially write off some of your debt. Question 5 is, how do I pay less and come to an agreement with Trace Debt Recovery? Well, there's a number of ways you might be able to reduce your repayment amounts and the amount that you repay. If you're struggling to make the repayment amounts, there's several options you could explore. If Trace Debt Recovery are adding interest and charges to your debt, then you could ask them to freeze that to help you get back on track and clear your debts quicker. Debt collectors are more likely to stop or reduce interest and charges if you can prove that you're in financial difficulties. I would suggest you put together a budget showing your income and your essential living costs so you can clearly demonstrate your financial difficulties. You can also use that budget to negotiate reduced payments. Again, for this, you'll need to show that the reason why you can't afford those higher repayments. So use that budget to write down your income and your essential living costs to demonstrate what you can afford. Sometimes debt collectors will only agree to reduce payments for a short set period of time, and at the end of this period they'll want a update and review of your situation. Other times debt collectors will agree to a much longer repayment period of time. This will totally depend on the nature of your debt and your individual circumstances. If you have the cash, you could make a full and final settlement offer. This is where you ask if they'll let you pay a lump sum instead of the full balance that you owe on your debt. In return for that lump sum, some debt collectors will agree to write off the remainder of the debt. And as promised, here's my bonus tip on how you might be able to write off some of your debt. And it's not just with Trace Debt Recovery, by the way. If you have debts with other people, there's lots of ways you can significantly reduce your payments and even write off some of your debt. During my career in the credit card industry, I gained a lot of insider knowledge, and as a result, I discovered there's 7 relatively unheard of debt solutions that are available in the UK. The industry doesn't really advertise many of these because most of them are either free or low cost. Now, unfortunately, these solutions are not available for everybody. You do need to be in very specific circumstances, but there's probably at least one of these solutions that you do qualify for. You could either be paying less than you already do already, or maybe even write off some of your debt. To make it simple for you, I've created a free eligibility checker, which I've linked to in the description below. It's just 5 simple questions and takes less than 30 seconds to find out if you can reduce your repayments and even write off some of your debt. So click the link in the description below and go and do that now.